I think. Oops. Yes.
Good night, Darren. Thank you.
Morning, welcome everybody. Monday morning. Seems like it's Thursday already. Apologies, Councillor Ryan Hope. It's not here. Minutes is the second item. Happy with the minutes from the last meeting? Any declarations of interest? Nope. Public participation, there isn't any. Questions from councillors? There aren't any. 6, forward plan, it's in the agenda pack. Anybody got any comments? Item 7 is our terms of references. It's just for noting, hasn't changed. Happy we note them. And so on to item 8, which is the first substantive item. Ross Bowell, 20%.
So this is the Dorset Council Commissioners report. It's an update on in relation to the delivery of the against the commissioning agreement. So the shareholders are asked to note the progress made again and the continued cooperation between the council and DCO. The focus of the report, which you've had, is around sort of exception reporting and highlights. Contract management continues with ongoing regular operational reviews, and the internally written report provided to the commissioners, which we review and combine with visits to site and with senior management at DCO. The commissioning group, the Dorset Council commissioning group, continues to meet to consider future commissioning needs for DCO. In terms of contract delivery, there's good progress in operational areas and in continuing growth as DCO moves towards its current existing capacity. There is good performance, operational performance in terms of outcomes for children, including further developments in terms of formal qualifications alongside the other outcomes for children. And DCO has recently had an open day. The annual QA review will happen towards the end of this summer term, and a more substantive report back to shareholders will follow that in the September meeting. You'll also note in the report there is a section around modelling value. As commissioners, we're working alongside colleagues in Adults Around Care Dorset, looking at how we articulate the existing and future value of DCO and the provision that it makes to inform our commissioning decisions going forward, and articulation to shareholders and other stakeholders in the future.
Thank you. Anybody want to speak? Comments, questions? Taylor.
Yeah, I'll just ask a quick one. As you've just mentioned, you're making good progress in sort of various areas that you've listed in 3.1. I'm just wondering, I mean, I'm a person who likes KPIs, likes standards. Making good progress to me doesn't actually mean a lot. So I'm just wondering, do you measure anything? What is your good progress? What are you actually aiming for? So how will you know when your good progress has actually got there, rather than the sort of woolly words that we've got at the moment, if you'll excuse them?
No, absolutely. And you know, I mean, there's a range of areas and KPIs against those. So I'll just highlight some of those. Perhaps for this meeting, it might be better whether for colleagues in the company to talk to those a little bit. But there's measures around progress and attainment, quality of teaching and learning. Attendance is a critical one, safeguarding measures, behaviour, complaints, health and safety in the premises, management of the site, and financial reporting, HR, corporate reporting as well. So, you know, we can bring forward some of those measures more explicitly going forward.
Okay, I mean, some of those might be useful at some time. It was just a general question I was asking.
Yes.
Yeah, just couple of questions. They do apply equally to the next paper, so I don't know who's going to be best placed to answer them. The comment is that 56 families in relation to 129 kids, like almost half of the, the families represented, is fantastic. The questions are 3.3. When you say valued qualifications, what does that mean? And secondly, so we've got 4 non-Dorset kids in the school at the moment. I wonder what demand was like for places out with Dorset. So 2 questions. I'm not sure where I should be looking, really.
I'm happy to take that. It's Andy Holder, Managing Director of DECO. Regarding the qualifications and the accreditation, we are really looking at broadening that out. And in terms of a little bit more detail about what those are. So we've had a real push this year on functional skills level 1 and level 2, which really provides the starting blocks of gaining accreditation, particularly in functional maths and literacy. So we're building on that as a baseline for all children, progressing through the framework there and looking at the different levels of qualification that can be earned. But more importantly, we think is that there is an opportunity and a pathway now, not only to choose the subjects that they want to study at Key Stage 4, but also to access GCSE level qualifications for those. So that we started to do that a little bit last year, but in this exam season, we've been able to offer more qualifications in a broader range of subjects, and it's been really successful. Obviously, exam results aren't out yet, but no, it's been a good bit of progress for us.
That was absolutely what I was hoping the answer would be.
So any other questions? Sorry.
The other question was demand for places from families, young people out with Dorset.
Yeah. Should I go again? Yeah. I mean, the majority of those children, although it's a small number of the 4, are children that were placed by Dorset Council and then moved out of Dorset into a neighbouring county, and it made sense to everyone for their placement to continue. So that we have in the past taken some placements directly commissioned from local authorities, but the majority are that scenario. So that in terms of demand, there is significant interest from neighbouring authorities, particularly Wiltshire, because we are in Wiltshire, and they are particularly interested in our level of quality, which isn't seen everywhere, and obviously our competitive fee compared to alternatives. At the moment, we continue to really focus heavily on providing the service of Dorset Council and Dorset children first, and we haven't felt there's capacity to do a lot of work with other local authorities yet, but it's always an option which, for various reasons, might suit everybody, but we'll always do that in partnership.
Just coming on that as well, sorry, Ian Cunfire, Chair of the Board of Dorset Centre of Excellence. We are limited for children from outside of Dorset because of the TECL arrangements. So we have to be very careful we don't exceed a 19% income stream from other authorities.
That's interesting.
So because of the nature of the way the company is set up as effectively as a local authority trading company, we're restricted on what we can draw in from other authorities.
Questions? I've got a couple following up from that, actually, I guess. So what's the current maximum capacity for the site? So it's 125 plus 4. Could we actually take more? And if we can take more, what's the intended rollout? Obviously, we're coming to the end of term. So is September going to see more kids there?
But I mean, Andy can answer the answer, but we can certainly, our capacity is much more than the number we've got at the present time. But the facilities aren't necessarily up to standard to take it at the present time. Andy, you want to give the capacity?
Yeah, so we've got an amendment to our commissioning agreement with the council to rise to a plateau of 152. The long-term plan that everyone is committed to is that we will grow beyond that. Ofsted and the Department for Education have got a registered role of 200, and we have a business plan that hopes to get beyond that, maybe even up to a capacity of 244. But the route to getting there requires more capital investment, which is in discussion at the moment.
Can I say a bit more to that as well? We had a strategy meeting for our board on Friday, and we were looking at various rooms and facilities on the site that are currently there, which we were considering whether, from our own reserves, which are limited, but there are some reserves, whether we could inject some small amount of money to bring up to a reasonable standard some extra classrooms, which would allow us, without any further capital investment, to bring on some more children onto the site quicker than it would be to rely on a larger capital injection.
Can I add a little bit more, which is that absolutely the facilities have got to be there, but what, as a school, has to be very clear is that children do not come on board in lumps of 30, that they come slowly and they're properly integrated. So it's not in September we can take so many more. It would have to be over a period of time. There are examples not too far away in other authorities where the Department for Education has not understood that, and clearly there have been problems. And so it's very important that it's very carefully managed.
I guess my follow-up question then is Dorset Council, either through its commissioning activity or its capital investment, holding you back?
Through its capital investment?
Or commissioning?
From its commissioning, no.
No.
From its capital investment, I think it'd be fair to say that the estimates that have been drawn up regarding the capital spend are very high, and one would understand why the council would be very nervous about trying to secure that sum of money, which is why, again, we had a meeting on Friday, and Ross was there as well, where we were looking at how we could reduce that capital spend. We've had surveyors on site working voluntarily for us to look at costing what work needs to be done, and their costings come out considerably less than the costings that have been provided to the council from its consultants. But yes, there is an issue about the capital spend.
And if I may, there is an issue between how money is spent and where it's sourced, and the call on the high needs block in terms of our fees, and that there is a very close connection between the two.
You look as though you want to comment, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Paul Dempsey, Executive Director of Children's Services. As you probably know, as a team within the council, including senior officers and relevant elected members, we have been discussing the next stages of the development of the Dorset Centre of Excellence. Part of those discussions has been a discussion around capital investment. And of course, the other bit of the discussion has been what's best for our children and what kind of education do they need, and what kind of facilities, and what's the geographical considerations, etc., etc. So we haven't come to a position where we're wanting to make clear proposals to get a next stage agreed. We've got some further work to do, and I understand that there has been some new developments and suggestions from Centre of Excellence itself, but we haven't worked those through and come to a position where we can clearly make proposals on those yet. So, significant amount of work to do, and elected members have asked us to continue to do that and come to a position.
Tyler?
Sorry, I didn't introduce myself last time. I'm Councillor Taylor, and I'm Cabinet Member for Housing and Health. This is a really interesting conversation, because when I looked at Coombe House a few years ago, one thing that came across to me was the commercial potential for the site. And one of my reasons for agreeing to the purchase was, when I looked at it, I thought we desperately need the work that you're doing for SEND children. That has got to be the main focus of what we're doing. But there are commercial opportunities around the site. So I just wonder if we can broaden out this conversation to the wider site, apart from just the facilities for the school and that the school desperately needs, and just look at where we go in longer term with this. I seem to remember there was a really beautiful little chapel there that could be used. There's some big accommodation blocks that are sitting there. There's also, I think, 3 or 4 houses in the grounds, plus there's huge grounds there. I'm just wondering sort of how much of the facilities are we using at the moment, and whether there's any plans to increase the usage of the site.
So let me take the question first. I'm sure some of my colleagues may come in as well. The starting point is that the whole of the site is your asset as a council.
Yeah.
So what you do with the site either decreases or increases your asset effectively. It's on your balance sheet, I presume. It's the lease, all of the site is leased to us. So therefore, operationally, how we manage that site is down to our board to some degree. If we take the houses, for example, which could have been used for children's care, we require a commissioning agreement to do that. We're not going to set that on ourselves. That discussion was started. It has stopped at the present time, but there are houses that could be used for children's care as well. In terms of the period building, where you mentioned the chapel, that does require an investment. It's got huge potential for a number of different sort of activities within it, and probably for your commercial activity as well. But it does require an investment. Now, that is a capital investment that we haven't got. How much that capital investment is, I think, is a matter for discussion, depending on which consultants you get in and to what quality they want to bring that building up to. But that, I walked around the period building with colleagues on Friday, and on the ground floor, we were looking at some of the areas which superficially, when you look at it, don't look like they need a lot of work. There is things like electrical and mechanical, and they're always expensive to change, but nevertheless, superficially, it looks like it could be brought on board probably quicker than we're hearing in other ways. But that's, I think, a matter for others to consider. In terms of commercial use at the present time, though, of course, we've got the swimming pool and we've got outside areas. We have to balance that with the use of the children in the school, which we are doing. But we're limited on any of the other buildings at the present time. The building which has potential for lettings and other things, of course, is the period building in terms of its setting and everything else. But that's not able to be used at the present time.
Right. So what are the long-term plans? I mean, it's our asset, so the costs, a lot of the costs will come back on us. What are the longer-term plans?
I think that's what's being mentioned, is being discussed at the present time. And it's why we held a strategy meeting, because we looked at the figures and we're thinking they're very, very high as well. And I think as a board, we've got a responsibility to work closely with the council to say, well, we need a capital investment, but if we've got to pay back the loan figures on that, that's going to put the fees up, but way above what we want to do. We want to make sure we keep the fees at a reasonable level, because if once we have to make a loan repayment on high capital, the only way we can recover that is to put the fees up more. That's counterproductive. So we were looking at how we could look at a much more reduced capital spend on the premises, at the same time achieve the objective of getting the whole site operational, both as a school and both in terms of other facilities that could generate an income.
Okay, because sorry, excuse me, coming back, Chair. When you were talking a moment ago, you were just expanding its use as a school, basically. And I think I want some assurances that it's being looked at as a wider asset.
It is.
Okay. So, sort of when we have these sort of conversations, I don't just want to hear about what's happening with the classrooms and that, which is great, and that has got to be the priority. And it absolutely has to stay as a priority. But it's where we can help to generate additional income for the site, which will also help keep the fees as they are.
May I just come in and also to explore other uses, for example, the children's home idea and or respite care, which will meet a need of Dorset's children.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's all to support. The main purpose, obviously, is the school, but there are ways of supporting children. Yeah, in addition.
Aidan?
I just contextualise this for a second. So I'm Aidan Dunn, the Exec Director for Corporate Development within the council. So I think it's right that we look at the potential of the site, but just in terms of the context of commissioners. So we spend about £93 million a year on buying places all around Dorset, and of that, about 10% currently is with Coombe House. So we know that we need to buy more places because the demand for the level of demand's going up, the number of education and healthcare plans going up. So as commissioners, what we've got to think about is if we do invest capital to create these new places, It could be at Coombe House, but it could be at other facilities around Dorset as well. So that's the commissioner discussion that we're looking at. So it's not, so Coombe House isn't the only option. We've got to work out what's the best location, what's the best value for money. And then, so that's with the pure commissioning hat on. And then in this space, Coombe House is a company that we own as a council. So we've kind of got a different layer of complexity there. So it's the best place to come there. And then the next layer is if it's not just about investing in school places, what else can we do with the site as well? So that's the layers of complexity that we're considering as a commission.
My immediate comment on that is if we're only spending 10% of 93 million on Coombe House, yet the whole Deco, sorry, that's an old name. But the whole reason for buying the site was to actually provide better provision at a cheaper cost. Why aren't we doubling it to 244? I think is what Andy said. It seems that that's surely going to give us value for money, or you implying that Deco is not giving us value for money?
So no, I'm not saying that. And this is where the interesting conversation about the extra costs, but the conversation we're having at the moment is the additional capital cost for those additional placements, the marginal cost. Is this the best value for money option as opposed to other options that we're looking at? Well,
It's not just money, places, locations.
It's locations, which as we know, it's in Wiltshire. Not like very good, but I think we wrap this one up. Yes, yeah. So the recommendation is just to note.
Well, can we have something back on the wider, basically finance long-term intentions for this, the whole site?
Report back to this.
Yeah, because we come to these meetings and we just hear about the school, which is brilliant, doing some excellent work, but it's a colossal site and we own it as an asset. And I'd just like more information about the actual site and what our longer term plans are to help you basically keep our costs down and all the rest of it. Because it just seems that we've got a huge asset there that needs a lot of spending on it that we're not doing. And
I think we probably need an update, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure things will make that happen. Okay, it's just for noting this, so everybody noted it. And we'll move on to the next item, which is a report from the chair of the board.
I think I would start by saying the report is from the board of the Dorset Centre for Excellence, not just Coombe House School, as that's worth saying first of all. And Coombe House, of course, is the key part of our delivery. But going back to the original vision for the site and what's being raised here, was it was a multi-purpose site and not just a school. And I think at the moment we are focusing far more, quite rightly, on the school until we work out what we do with the rest of the site. My report, not apologetically, but naturally at this time of year, is fairly thin in that it's actually business as usual for us at the present time. And that it's really nice to say it's business as usual in a special school, because sometimes it isn't quite as usual as you expect, really. And Andy's just mentioned exams and other points. We're not in a position at the present time when we can give any details about exam results. Children and young people have been taking exams. We are hoping, and we're pretty positive that those results are going to be very, very good. I think my best way to address the report today is to just ask my colleagues to come in first of all, but Andy just to address any key issues, and then other members of my board to come in. I'd be quite happy to hear from Leslie, for example, who's very well connected with parents. So our relationship with parents is very, very important to us at the present time as to what comments she would have. But I'll hand over to Andy first of all.
Yeah, thank you. So I won't go through the report in full, but I'll just pick out a few pertinent points. I mean, within the school section, just to re-highlight that we continue to grow and we continue to prioritise children who live in Dorset and who are placed by Dorset. And we have done more work recently in line with Dorset as a commissioning body to find creative bespoke solutions for children who otherwise wouldn't have any other options regarding a school placement, which has been a new development for us and is going well, and I think is valued by the council. And we've also done a lot of work developing our curriculum and behaviour policy. And one of the things we are identifying is we are offering something that is a little bit different from other independent special schools, and people are feeding back that they're sensing a quality that's higher and different to the norm. And those two documents, the curriculum policy and the behaviour policy, is our latest iteration about why we're different and why it's working in a different way. So we're very pleased to get those over the line, and they're soon to be published. Obviously, governance and quality assurance is critical with any school, but particularly an independent special school where things can change very, very quickly. Our quality assurance and governance procedures continue to be very, very strong. Lots of different independent voices coming in and seeing and observing and offering support and challenge. Regarding the non-school commercial activity, we are, as ever, keen to progress on that as much as we can within the buildings that are available to us. One of the things that is opened up for business is our swimming pool, and we really try and do as much as we can with that as the first step on the road towards offering extensive commercial activities and opportunities. We partnered with the Rotary Club recently, certainly within this reporting period, to do a swimathon on a Sunday where several £100s was raised for their charity endeavours, which went down incredibly well with the community. We're also extending the offer regarding swimming lessons for local children, where otherwise they'd have to travel to neighbouring towns, and which may put some of them off, which is a valued offer. And our school farm, Coombe House Farm, is developing really nicely now, and where we can, we're involving members of the community to join us in that endeavour. So we've got several volunteer groups engaged with that who are coming in and helping to get that established, which is obviously having a social and community impact, which is very valued. The note in the business plan comes back to capital investment, which we've covered earlier in this meeting. My interpretation of this issue is that everyone is still committed to making Coombe House the scale that it always was intended to be. And I think everyone is optimistic. It's just making sure we do that in the best value for money way, rather than rushing ahead with the first idea that's put on the table. So, and we are working as closely as we can with council colleagues to make sure that offers value for money through thinking creatively and differently, and we hope that progresses soon. Just regarding HR and our people section, just to reiterate, we have a stable leadership. We're not having leadership churn, so that gives everyone reasons for optimism. And in terms of our finances, we also are stable. We've had our obviously year-end accounts sort of drafted. They're going through the audit process, but they look pleasing, and the first month of accounts that we've had for this financial year have also come through well and as expected, which is good. One more element for me, which is just a nod towards our environmental impact. We've had some really interesting discussions involving members of staff and members of our school community involving the pupils around the fulcrum of this sort of, or the catalyst for this issue was how much we should be mowing our grass and our lawns, and how much we should let it go to wildflowers and help the local wildlife establish and feel welcome in our environment. And as a result, we've set up a sort of multi-generational environment committee involving our children, our staff, and members of the community who are coming in to volunteer with the farm to try and work out what's the right middle ground with all of that, which feels really positive. So that's going to start soon, and I think we'll end up covering more than that as time goes on about how we can have a positive environmental impact and help the climate wherever we can, which is the main points I was going to raise.
Well, before any other question, I wonder if Leslie can come on about parental being.
Leslie Weller, Non-Executive Director, and also the Chair of Dorset Parent Carer Council, which is the SEND forum for Dorset. I do talk to the families up there, as you can imagine. We're a right gossip crowd. The feeling from the parents at the school is they're so enthused and encouraged about the future for their children. The talk at the moment, quite rightly, is about those taking their exams. There is a cohort of children taking their exams or have just finished taking their exams that all the families know about. And these are children that have had a horrible journey to get to Coombe House. And that journey has impacted on their family relationships. And now that they can see there is a route, there is possibilities, they've got an aspiration in their lives now. And it means so much to the parent carers that at last they can hold their heads up and say, he's in a brilliant school. And they talk about it with pride. They talk about the investment that Dorset Council put in. It's cost him an arm and I like to get him here, I know that, but look at it. So that final destination now is coming with positivity, which is what is the ethos of children's services. It's about planning for the future. And the families now can see it, so they feel very grateful that they've had that opportunity to get there. But behind those families are other families who are waiting, who are listening, who are wanting to have that place now because they're hearing so much positivity about it. And this is why, yes, we need to increase the numbers, and we will. The other thing that I really need to reiterate is the community spirit. If you've got Shaftesbury councillors in here, you'll know that that community now is building. People are talking about it in the community, whether it's the farm, whether it's the walled garden, the swim. There is that community build-up, and I think that's vitally important for children, especially children who've got social, emotional, and mental health, to feel that actually they're part of something now instead of being on that sidelines and periphery. So I think, you know, it's really good feelings about what we've got in Coombe House.
And finally, ask Francis, because Francis is on our Curriculum and Quality Committee. Our Curriculum and Quality Committee is the main subcommittee of the board that oversees the school on the site effectively and looking at the KPIs and the delivery of education elsewhere on that, Francis.
Yes, and that all the children who come to Coombe House are going to live in the world as adults, and at the moment they're finding it really hard to live in the world that is out there, which for them is a school world. And so for them to come to Coombe House, for them to begin to discover a different way of doing things, a different way of being, to begin to have what other children have. Some of them this year made choices about subjects. They've never been asked to choose anything in their lives. They've seen all their peers choose their subjects for exams, and that hasn't happened for them. So it's something about, and then discovering the ones who are sitting exams, it's making them feel very anxious. So there's been a discussion, yes, it makes everybody feel very anxious. That's about living in the world. We are here to help you learn to do that. So all of those things I think are fundamentally important about bringing the children up alongside their families to go out and live in the world. And also, and have better lives, and frankly, cost the state less in the end, because otherwise they will be costing a lot of money in various ways.
And I just had one final point, thanks, Francis. One final point, it came up about KPIs and how we measure ourselves. One of the discussions we've had as a board is how we can produce a family of similar schools to compare ourselves against. It's very easy to put your self-attendance in the national framework, but attendance isn't quite the same at Coombe House it would be against other schools. So we're looking to identify a family of schools. They may not be all Dorset schools, they may be much wider, but with similar characteristics, so that we can generally compare ourselves. For example, attendance. We know our attendance is, I think 77%, is it? Is 77% at the present time. That doesn't sound very good if you compare it with 90-something% for a mainstream school, but it may be very good if you compare it with special schools of the type that Coombe House is.
I think you can be sure that it is good.
But I want to be absolutely sure it is good by having a family of schools to compare ourselves against. That's the discussion we have at the board, is that how can we, although we have the feeling about that, how can we evidence that to make sure that we are doing it? So we're creating a family of schools that will allow our standard KPIs to be looked at against others, and hopefully we can share that with those schools as we identify.
Questions?
Well, I suppose demonstrate that we are paying attention. It describes recruitment as a priority. Hiding behind that, the word priority isn't a challenge, is it?
No, I wouldn't say it's a challenge. It requires everyone's attention all of the time, but we are confident that we'll meet our expected numbers for September.
I know that's been the track record with us today. Yeah.
So I was going to ask the same question. So I'll ask a follow on. You mentioned there was no churn in the leadership team. What's the churn like in the normal leadership, the day to day? Is it a matter of concern? Was it normal? You're obviously going to get some turnover.
Yeah, it feels very typical for schools of this type. We've just been through the kind of traditional window of resignation for teachers who want to move in time for September, and the numbers that wrote to us to say they were moving on were very low. We've got our own sort of growth anticipated recruitment targets on top of those, but it feels like we're in a good place regarding retention.
I just excuse me. Do we have benchmarking it in relation to other specialist provision?
No, only
Exception.
only just from my own personal knowledge of independent special schools and recruitment and retention, I'd say that, you know, Coombe House in terms of attendance and recruitment and retention is very, very positive.
It is another metric that we keep an eye on. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the key things about recruitment and retention is to get the recruitment right in the first place. If you get the recruitment wrong in the first place, you've got a problem down the road about retention. If someone's got into a school and they're not quite sure that they want to work in that type of environment, that type of school, it becomes a problem. So it's really focusing on getting the right people in to start with.
So I guess my next question is, we set up a company in joint venture with Kent County Council off the top of my head. Is that something you use? So it's a recruitment company. Is that something that DECO would actually use or could use eventually if you don't?
I've not discussed it. I actually live in Kent, but go see them. I think we're more than happy to use anybody to recruit the right staff. So I don't know, do we use that company?
Shall I just comment? So it's a company called Connect to Dorset. So it's a joint venture with Kent. And at the moment we use it mainly, well, for sort of primarily administrative staff and social workers as well. So we haven't got teachers on the books, but it's certainly something we could look at.
Is it permanent recruitment or agency?
It's interim, temporary
So
recruitment.
mainly agency.
Yeah, mainly agency, but we do try and use it as a very helpful company to convert temporary into permanent.
But one of the issues that we discussed at the last board meeting actually was our use of agency staff for teachers. And we haven't used any agency staff, really, for teachers. Now, in other schools, you may find teachers not prepared to cover, but we're finding that teachers are prepared to cover. So we're not using agency at the present time. We had that discussion because of the discussion about whether we should over-recruit staff, whether we should recruit an extra member of staff to act as almost like a permanent in-school cover as it goes ahead. And we felt that, yes, that to over-recruit when we've got good staff is a better strategy than either other staff covering and getting a bit tired from it or using agency staff.
Substantial.
One other question, because I didn't get this answer before. What's your expected role in September?
152.
152. And I've got another question. So last time I was there on the tour, there was a gym next to the swimming pool, which wasn't being used for community use. Is it being used, or if not, is still in detention? I think there was an issue with VAT off the top of my head, but then I heard that VAT was going to get charged on schools anyway. So what's the situation with that?
The main barrier with that and other areas of the school is actually business rates, not VAT.
That's business rates.
Yeah. So because we're a special school, buildings that are used for the purposes of a special school are completely exempt from business rates. But we have had correspondence from Wiltshire Council to say that if we use any of those buildings at all for anything that isn't the special school, then that exemption is removed for that entire building. So therefore, to offer one session once to a member of the public would cost us thousands in the business rates that would then be payable. So we are engaging in partnership with council colleagues, with a consultancy that is looking at that issue for us. They are hoping they'll be able to provide us with some slightly different advice, which means more options will be there. But we want to be very secure on that footing before we proceed, so that we don't end up piling more costs onto what effectively trickles down to a fee change by getting the business rates wrong. So we're stuck at the moment, but we're engaging with the right professionals to give us the advice that will help unblock that.
Questions? No. Again, this is just for noting. Thank you. Very interesting. In which case we move on to the next item, which is urgent items, which there aren't any, and there aren't any business either. So it's the meeting closed, which is your attendance.
And on screen, please.
So.